Y bueno, ahora seguimos con otra charla inspiradora. Steven nos contará cómo en menos de 90 días logró transformar una plataforma médica que estaba en apuros y sin documentación. Steven es un amigo de la casa. Cuando Sophie y Fede vivían en California, él fue un gran anfitrión y ahora esperan devolverle ese favor. And so, in English now, Steven will share how in less than 90 days he transformed a struggling medical platform with no documentation. So, Steven is a friend of the house. When Sophie and Fede lived in California, he was such an amazing host, and now we hope to return him the favor. So, please welcome Steven.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Are you enjoying the conference so far today? Yeah? Fantastic. All right. Show of hands. Who has learned something new today? Perfecto. Who is going to be taking something home and implementing something right away based on what you have learned? Yes. Then this is a fantastic conference. I hope to give you a little more. So I'm going to tell you a story about a client that we work with. And when we got the call, this was not a normal, clean consulting engagement. It was triage. It was messy. It was on fire. Without naming names of the company, it's a large medical billing platform that, in the healthcare, that recoups insurance underpayments for hospitals and patients. And it was absolutely collapsing under its own weight. So I am Stephen Winter. I'm a QA leader at Scorpion Computer Services. I'm the founder of Winter Technology. And this is the story how we rebuilt trust, culture, and credibility in 90 days. Real quick about who we are. This will be quick. Scorpion has a 30-year legacy solving mission-critical problems that were failure simply not an option. Supporting the U.S. Army unmanned vehicle, aerial systems, Navy command and control, the largest mutual funds in the world, royal families, foreign governments, major utilities, insurers. They've been the quiet fixers behind the scenes for some of the largest and most complex systems in the world. And Winter Technology, we apply the same engineering mindset to modern QA automation and AI-driven quality. Together, we like to call it, we build trust under pressure. Then this project landed. What the client thought they purchased, they're a large conglomerate. They go and buy up companies and companies. What they thought that they purchased was a $10 million line of annual revenue. What they really inherited was a platform with no documentation, no real QA, and 3 major clients lawyering up, threatening lawsuits because they couldn't get them implemented and live in what they promised. And there was this one person, a vice president from the company that they acquired. She was the one doing all of the testing before anything went out the door and doing it manually. She wasn't trained in software delivery, but she knew the platform inside and out. And she was holding the line on quality for all these releases. But she was a bottleneck. It was one person. And a lot of the times, she would stop the release on the night it was to release because she found something. And sometimes it was a bug, but a lot of times it was a change, which is a feature request. And she didn't really know the difference because she was trying to help the client and accommodate the client. So the company, the CIO, pulled us aside, and we were working on some other stuff with the company. They said, "Hey, Scorpion, please, in the next 3 months, stop us getting sued. We don't want to be sued. We want to get the product out the door." So we had 90 days to make it predictable, testable, and compliant. Remember, this is healthcare, medical billing. And to do that, we had to rebuild trust across 3 very different audiences. The clients, who had lost confidence in the company, the leadership, who had lost confidence in the team, and the developers who lost confidence in the platform. So we approached it like a hospital emergency room stabilization. Not perfection, just proof of life. We like to say that first we're going to work on your jugular bleed out, and then we'll work on your high cholesterol. So as I go through and tell you the story, since it is the topic of the day, I'll be inserting where we used AI, how we used AI, how we didn't trust AI, how we validated AI, and how it made us go faster. And also, at the end of this, I'll give you a framework that you can go back and use straight away. And it's a simple framework. It's complicated to do the work, but it's a very straight-ahead framework, and I'm going to go piece by piece. So phase 1, the first 30 days was all about discovery. We interviewed every subject matter expert, every developer, because there was no documentation. There was nothing to explain exactly how this, it was a 14-year-old application. There was nothing to explain us how it worked. So it was all tribal knowledge. It was all in people's heads. And we used AI to transcribe all those meetings recordings and plot out what were the pain points, what were the bottlenecks, just how did things work. And for the first time in the company's history, we were able to show how the data flowed, how files were ingested into the system and how they were processed, and where the pain lived. And that became our blueprint for the recovery. Phase 2. Once we had all of that information from all those interviews, we turned that into documentation. We turned that documentation into action. We took all those AI-generated docs and transcripts and turned them into specifications. We turned them into test plans. We turned them into training guides. And we turned them into test cases and automated smoke tests. Once we got that going, then we figured out, okay, well, you're not testing in proper environments, so we're going to stand up using AWS and infrastructure as code. We're going to stand up environments so you can properly test. So we have a dev environment, we have a QA environment, of course we have production. So then we started really cooking with gas. You can actually test in the right way. So the first time in years, the company was starting to see the light that we could release with confidence instead of hope. How many of you have been in situations like this? I'm sure more than one. Yes, thank you. So some of what I'm saying will be very obvious. You've been here. So a note about that AI. The AI gave us the scaffolding, but the ownership, our ownership, is what made it real. We never shipped anything. We never took any action that we got from AI without validating every line, every piece of information that it gave us. Nothing was a wholesale, we believe in it. So let me pause real quick and do a quick poll, because all of you are using AI for something, whether it's like Kyle was saying in the previous talk about relationship advice, or you're actually building some code. By show of hands, how many of you trust AI 100% of what it says? Good. I'd be mad if someone raised their hand. What about 75%? I trust what it says about 75%. Anybody? Yeah, that's sort of common. What about 50% or less. Yeah, good. I would expect at a QA conference with a bunch of brilliant testers that you don't trust, you verify. So I'm the same way. I do not trust, and for all of my team, I encourage the use, but I tell them, as long as you can close your computer and you can prove to me you understand, you better not be using what AI told you, right? So ultimately, with experience, with verifying, validating what it says, it just made us go 10 times faster, right? That was sort of the power. It didn't decide what was correct. We decided what was correct. Okay, phase 3. So now we got environments. We're starting to build out documentation and specs and have a better idea of what's going on. But the developers, they're still coding blind. No unit tests, no safety nets, no visibility on what's going on. So I didn't ask them. We built a unit test harness for all of the legacy code of the application. We then mandated, we didn't ask them, we mandated that for all new code required checking in unit tests to the repo for you to merge your code. Seems normal to a lot of us here, but they weren't doing any of that. And I had to threaten that you would be pulled off of the project if you didn't do it. So they had to take it seriously. And it's not that the developers didn't want to do it. They had been pushed and pushed and pushed to go faster, 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 to take care of the customer. And it was not sustainable. They didn't have the time to slow down and do what's right. They could only do what was available and do the best you can do. So when we came in, we slowed things down a little bit, which a lot of times the management team doesn't like that when you slow it down a little bit. But sometimes that's what you have to do, right? You have to slow down a little bit, figure out what the right thing to do is, and then you can go faster. So we embedded the QA team with the developers. We sat shoulder to shoulder with them. We taught them about implementing the unit tests. We tested with them and showed them how that testing, because they were a little, this is going to slow me down, someone's going to yell at me. Like, no. If we're testing right up front where you're coding, then actually you're going to get testing feedback faster. It's not going to be a day or a week or the next sprint or whatever it is until the non-existent QA team can test it. You're going to have feedback right there, at least from those unit tests. So now you're starting to get code across the door with some more confidence and understanding of what you're actually doing, which means you can go faster. We weren't stopping the releases anymore. The confidence started to raise. Now, this was crazy. So these are major medical billing platforms: Epic, Meditech, Star, Cerner. Major billing. All hospitals in the U.S. and abroad use these major systems. And the way that this platform worked, like a lot of medical billing, is you have flat files that come in, and it reads those files, it ingests them into the system, it goes and grabs these millions of claims for the patients, and it goes figures out where the insurance companies underpaid. I know that's novel to hear that a health insurance company may not pay their whole bill, but we would find where they would underpay, and then we would go get the money. But the trick was, even though these medical billing systems are normal, for the healthcare industry, every file that would come in from each one of these clients was a unique flower. They were not enforcing any kind of file schemas. They were not enforcing any kind of formats. It was all different files, different rules. So every single client, they were reinventing the wheel. It was a unique flower for every single client, which is crazy, right? That's crazy. So that's where we jumped in, and that was the next big piece that we tackled. Standardization and sanity. Since we knew the medical billing systems, we called the customer directly and said, hey, we're the nerds. We're the engineers and the nerds that understand the files. Please let us talk to your nerds so we can talk nerd to nerd and talk about how to teach them how to export the files and follow a standard schema. If you use Epic or you use Meditech, we know exactly what output should be. We can show you what buttons to push and how to export the files correctly. Now, why would they care to follow our rules since they're the customer? Well, we said if you follow the rules and you give us a standard file format, then we promise that we will get you live in 6 weeks. If you don't follow the rules, then you're a custom implementation, and it's going to take however long it takes. So do you want to start making money sooner from the billing feedback or some amorphous time frame? And so magically, we started getting standardized files. And magically, they started to work more quickly, and there was less unique flowers to deal with. And the result of all that? Predictability. That was the first big piece. That was about half of it, of why they were getting ready to get sued and not able to get their product out the door. So half of it was the files and standardizing and normalizing the files. And then there was the other half, the bottleneck. That VP that I talked about earlier, bless her heart, she cared and she tested as best she could, and there was a couple other folks that would help her test when they had time, but she was the bottleneck. So we respectfully removed her from the workflow because we basically took everything in her brain. She knew the most of the product. We basically emulated her brain using AI and just getting her to talk. Just let's have a Coke and talk, and just tell me about what happens when you do this. And she would just talk and talk, and then that would become instruction manuals. That would become specification, and then you turn that around and you build process based on her knowledge of the system. Like, look, I'm not telling you anything that's novel, but we're in the middle of a fire. There's lawyers, pounding on the doors, so I can't just magically say I know how the application works and go fix everything without understanding how the application works. So and she became a senior consultant for us. We would go to her when we couldn't figure something out, which became less and less as we understood the platform more and more. No more nightly emergency changes. No more one person deciding if code ships. We replaced heroics with process, and the chaos vanished almost overnight. So once stability was, this is phase 4 now. Once stability was in place with this file format and whatnot, and process, we started pushing harder. Then we started getting into load testing. We grabbed K6, grabbed Grafana Cloud, simulated real-world billing ingestion. We're talking millions of claims in these files coming in on the daily. We created, tested for multi-facility. A lot of hospitals have many different, many facilities. So the platform was never meant to be multi-facility. So we started load testing for multi-facility to see if it actually would work, because the sales team sold it as multi-facility. You ever had that happen before? The sales team sells something that the product actually wasn't meant to do? So we were able to, within about 30 days, from no load testing whatsoever, and I personally used AI and vibe coded the hell out of it, and built this K6 framework with Grafana, and we loaded up 100 facilities. I mean, the client that we were trying to onboard with multi-facility had 42 facilities. So I put 100 facilities in there and ramped it up and ramped it up. And within 30 days, we were able to expose the bottlenecks and tune the systems correctly and figure out what was going on. Now, the big magic from the AI perspective, not only did it help me code, because all of my quality, and at that point I had hired some quality engineers and some testers, and they were sort of doing the day-to-day with the stabilized product. And so I took it upon myself to go ahead and work on this load testing. AI helped me look at the results of the load test and tell me what's going on, right? It's pointed out some of the fires. And the way that I did it is I would look at my CloudWatch dashboard or my Grafana dashboard. I would do a screen grab of the dashboard and feed that into ChatGPT just to see, like, tell me what you can see from this screen grab. And within seconds, oh, well, your throughput is this and this and this. And now remember, I would go through and validate every single thing it said. But what would take me days to pour through all of that information took seconds. That made a big difference. Then we do another run, and I would do the same thing and said, now tell me run over run. What's the difference? What's new? In seconds, it would say, oh, well, this went from here to here. You just improved. Oh, this sucks. You got to go configure this piece of your stack. So it made a huge, huge difference. AI helped me move very quickly to pour through all the data. And once I validated what it was telling me, we were able to move very, very quickly. But it was our expertise and understanding that produced that data, that we understood it and knew where to go fix things. Then came traceability, and I'm going to be moving fast because I know we got a few minutes left. Then came the traceability. Again, the management lost confidence in the team, so we need to show them the data. We need to show them the hard facts of what a difference that was being made. And so we grabbed X-Ray. They already had Jira. We threw X-Ray into Jira, so now we had total predictability around. We had management around all the test cases, all the requirements coverage, all the results. Everything was there. We had AI to help us build some of the reports, and once we agreed with these reports and tweaked the reports, then we would share them with management. And while we were working on that traceability, we also took a big look at one of the other regulatory hurdles is PHI, Protected Health Information. And so at the time, they were testing with real live data from production, which exposed all the customer information, and that's a super no-no. So we rapidly built an obfuscation framework where we would take production, we'd cleanse it of the PHI and scramble it up, but we kept referential integrity. The data was still good data. And then we would turn that into an artifact, and then we'd spin up an environment with infrastructure as code, using Pulumi and other things, and then we'd throw the data in there. So now the developers and the testers, even the training team, had real data to use that was obfuscated. We actually became the darlings of the compliance team. That QA is not necessarily a risk because we're digging in and exposing these problems, but we took care of them and made sure that they stayed compliant. So by 90 days, everything had changed. The deliveries became predictable. There were no more critical outages for the next many releases. And the developers wrote tests by default. The leadership team started trusting and treating QA as the center of reliability, not the speed bump on the road to production. We went from firefighting to framework, and we went from chaos to clarity. So I've talked about AI here and there, and so I want to give you my quick opinion, and that is ultimately it's not AI or humans. It has to be both. It has to be both. But you have to have experience and context to have it accelerate you and enhance you. It is that experience amplifier. For some of you, we've been talking about AI all day. This is obvious to you. But back in the States, gosh, Amazon's laying off 14,000 corporate workers. Microsoft, 9,100. Indeed and Glassdoor, 1,300. October saw 153,000 job cuts cited as cost-cutting and AI integration. Folks are still spending a lot of money on AI. So it's very difficult for coders back home. You know, they're very, very scared. So what's the solution? Well, augmented leadership, augmented talent. How can it make you better rather than it's the thing over here and I'm scared of it? So it is absolutely integration of both. It amplifies the capabilities. So, at the end of the 90 days, remember I said it was they thought it was a $10 million line of business. Once we stabilized and took a look at how many more files we can scale and bring in with those claims, it was exponential. And how much faster we could get clean product and out the door and onboard new clients, additional clients. Both of those things mean more revenue for the company. We were able to show them that, no, your $10 million line of business is really $100 million, $500 million line of business if we keep on this trajectory. And they're like, yeah, sure. Yeah, interesting, sure. Then, like, right away, they signed their first $10 million client. And the product went from I think it was the 14th different product that this company had to the #1 product with the highest margin. And it's now the #1 product for the company. And because we helped them so quickly and triaged and showed them the revenue potential, they awarded us a multi-million-dollar contract to completely rewrite the system and do it the right way up front. And we're in the middle of writing up their 2.0 project right now. So that's the ROI of quality. Trust doesn't just project revenue, it creates it. So here's the framework, and I'll wrap it up real quick because I know I got 30 seconds. Phase 1, discover the truth. What's real? Talk to the people. Use AI to help get all the information and filter it down into what's right, what's important. Phase 2, create the clarity. Take those insights, turn them into specs, training manuals, test cases. Establish baseline environments if they don't have them. Standardize your schemas and force standardization, especially on known systems. Phase 3, share the ownership. Get in with your developer brothers and sisters. Make it everyone's job for quality. 4, prove the reliability. Automate, measure, report. Data. AI can help you with that. Grab X-ray or practice test or whatever your tool of choice is, but something where you can start putting reports on requirements traceability so you can show and prove what you've done and how long you've done it. And then phase 5, earn that trust. Just keep delivering on that productivity based on these other phases. So to wrap it up, 90 days, we built trust under pressure. AI helped us, but we did it. We were responsible for it. It augmented our capabilities. It helped us do it in 90 days instead of 900 days. And with that, I'll take your questions. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steven, for sharing your story.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone has a question? Okay, go.
You mentioned that you gave the example that when you were asking the developers to write unit tests, they were sort of unaccustomed to it because they were so used to, they always had to rush things, so they didn't have time, and they were sort of scared to do it. Were there any other points where you faced a lot of pushback, or from other groups of people, whether it was leadership, where they gave you pushback?
No, it's a good question. Yes, there were other issues with working with the developers because they had been doing the same thing for 12 years, you know, and they had been beat on from management. And they were just, they were inside of a box, you know, that, so we built this unit test framework and said, you have to do this now, you know, and then a month would go by and it's like, hey, why aren't you using the unit test framework? Why did you approve a pull request without a unit test? Remember I told you that's bad and you may be off the project? So I had to stay on them. And it was only after I kept going back with them, well, plus, you know, I'm talking to the CIO of the corporation every other day, and I'm talking to the C-suites and the PE firm that owns the company, you know, so we're working at that level as well as, you know, right on the front line with the team. So they know when we tell them you need to do this, you know, so it was, and then using the proper environments, and most importantly, it was accommodating, taking on any requests that would come in. Remember that VP I talked to you about? She would say, hey, we really should do this, this, and this, you know, on a release coming up, and we're like, hey, no, stop. That's a change request. You know, we don't really need to do that to get the product out the door next week. Incremental value, week over week, the agile way. You know, we had to really instill that into them, and it took a while. I mean, it was hard. And again, and it's not because they were bad people. They were doing their very best, right? So I didn't just go in and yell at them. Eventually I did, but I didn't come out the gate yelling at them. But they understood that we were there to protect them and to help them, and you're no longer getting beat up anymore. So do what's right, not what's just available. And that was a big key piece. And so that was it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Anyone, another question?
Okay, just maybe a quick one. You mentioned that you had to build a lot of documentation and a lot of processes from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, I imagine that it was like an enormous project, and it was something that you had to maybe trust AI in some way, or how do you, let's say, validate that creation and bulk of all that enormous documentation is valid?
Yeah, so the question is, how do we take all the information and make sure that it's correct, that we're going to build, that's the foundation. How do you know it's the right foundation? Is that sort of your question? Incremental value, incremental chunks. Talk to this person, understand what they have to say, that's a piece, verify it, move on to the next one. And then once you have enough of these pieces, you start building a proper foundation. And so we didn't try to boil the ocean in one day. We couldn't. We had to focus on, you know, what's the jugular, where's the biggest bleed, you know, before we got to your high cholesterol. So what are the biggest problems? Where are the biggest fires? And that's where it was consistency of files from the clients and removing the human bottlenecks, which is process. And you can't institute process unless you understand how things work, right? To then fix it and do it better. So that's where that, you know, you got to go find the truth first, even if it's an ugly truth. It typically is an ugly truth, right? You know, so that's how we did it. You know, we're still working with that client. We started with them in February. And so now I have a QA team of 13. I have 4 SDETs who are brilliant quality engineers. We've built a full playwright automation framework. We now have infrastructure as code, you know, Pulumi-based that just spins up environments on demand and runs all the unit tests. It runs all the playwright tests. And if everything's green, it kills the environment, so you don't keep spending money. So, you know, we keep enhancing it and kept enhancing it. Like now it's cooking with gas, you know, and now we're going, and that was just building automation around a smoke test for the whole application, like a basic, I always start with a smoke test, no matter what I do, right? That's what we do. So now, I'm not going to go through and write test cases for every possible thing inside that application because we're building version 2. What my team has been doing over the last couple of months is going every module by module and making a smoke test for that module, which is deeper than the broad acceptance test. but it's the next level for these core modules. And then we're automating them as fast as we can write the test cases. And so now we have a much more comprehensive test coverage for the 1.0 version, the 1.x version of the platform, while we start focusing on doing it the right way from the beginning on the new version that we're building for them, right? And it's full CI/CD, it's very sexy, it's very extensible, and it's normal modern software development is what it is. It's not stunted 14-year-old development. So, and we also are very clear that the more we can automate and reduce the maintenance cost to support the 1.x line, the lower, the faster we can take care of it, the lower the cost to maintain it. We know that that's where all of our paychecks come from, even as a consultant. So I want that to get in I want it to become boring in steady state to take care of that, so we can focus all of our attention on the new version. Thank you for the question.
Another question? Anyone? Okay. So
thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Steve.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.